Once again, explosions and gunfire shake Caracas, how Venezuela teeters on the edge of crisis, and Trump warns U.S. forces are ready to intervene. Greenland could be next. We'll talk about this with political analyst, European Leadership Network UK member Alexandra Filippenko. Alexandra, glad to see you, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Alexandra, yes, President Donald Trump stated that elections will not be held in Venezuela in the near future, as the country requires a prolonged period of recovery under American guidance. He also warned that U.S. forces are prepared to carry out a renewed invasion if the current authorities in Caracas cease cooperating with Washington. By the way, again in Caracas, near the presidential palace, explosions and gunfire were reported. Military vehicles and armed personnel have been observed on the streets, and the city is also experiencing power outages. What impact might ongoing instability in Caracas have, specifically on what and what next?
Well, first of all, we must say that for the Trump administration, it's extremely important to stress that this is not a regime change. Nothing like it. No. What we saw, according to the Trump administration, according to Marco Rubio, who gave, I think, 1,000 interviews in just one day, what we saw is just the person who is of interest to the American judicial system being extradited, being taken from his house in Caracas and brought to justice. Brought in front of a judge in New York City. And we know that since March 2020, there was an indictment for Nicolas Maduro, who the American side did not see as the president of Venezuela. The American side was very precise in stating that the 2024 election was stolen from the opposition, and that Nicolas Maduro actually lost the election, and Edmundo Gonzalez, the actual winner of the election, had to leave Venezuela. And I must say that Edmundo Gonzalez's son was arrested in Venezuela, and he is in custody, in Venezuelan custody. So we understand that this is a dictatorship regime in Venezuela. So what we are seeing, according to the Trump administration, this is just putting that person of interest for the American judicial system in front of a judge, while this is not a regime change. And if I may quote Marco Rubio, the state secretary, he said in one of his interviews that the Chavismo regime was in power for almost 20 years in Venezuela. And now everyone is asking why, after 24 hours that Maduro was arrested, everyone is asking why the elections have not been scheduled for tomorrow. This is a quote from Marco Rubio's, one of Marco Rubio's interviews. He's saying that no, they're not expecting the elections to happen tomorrow. This is a process that must take place. That's a process that will take some time. According to Venezuela's law, if the current regime, if the current president, the interim president, Delcy Rodriguez, accepts the fact that Nicolas Maduro is no longer the head of state, they need to have an election within 30 days. But she did not accept that Nicolas Maduro is not the president. She's still stating that she's the interim president and Maduro is the president of Venezuela. So she's just holding this position for some time while he's not in the country. But he is the president of Venezuela, and they will demand the United States to bring him back to Venezuela. So if she said that, no, Maduro is not the president, she had to have the election in 30 days. But now it seems like the American side is expecting the election to happen, but maybe not in next month, maybe not in next months, maybe not in next year. So we must say that for the American side, it's very important to stress it's not a regime change, and that they want to see Venezuela calm. They want to see Venezuela quiet. They want to see Venezuela not being under fire, or let's say they don't want to see a civil war erupt in Venezuela or anything like that. Right now, we are seeing that the regime is quite active in Caracas, and there were arrests. There were arrests of journalists. At least 7 journalists were arrested in Caracas. That's what we know. And a lot of people are being arrested, or hundreds are being detained right now. We don't know about arrests, but at least detained. Hundreds are detained in Venezuela, in Caracas. So we are seeing that the regime is working. But what the American side is saying, they will leave everyone alone, but they want to see one thing. They want to interact with anyone who is in charge in Venezuela, but they do not expect the elections to happen right now, but they expect only one thing. They expect that right now, as Marco Rubio said, that Iran, Russia, Hezbollah, China do not act in Venezuela. They expect only that. They expect that there are no drugs coming into the United States from Venezuela. They expect that there are no illegal immigrants being sent by the Venezuelan governments to the United States, as the American side has been saying, that the illegal immigrants, the criminals, are being sent to the United States. They expect nothing of that happening, of that nature happening. And if it's not happening, then the American side is ready to work with the Venezuelan government. They're ready to work with the current regime. They want to see the election happen, but they want to see the election happen in a normal manner. They don't want to see it happen tomorrow. They don't want to see it happen in 30 days. They want to see it happen, but a little later. As of now, the American side is very strong in stating that if Delcy Rodriguez, if Venezuelan regime is acting in good faith, if Venezuelan regime is working with the United States, then nothing will happen. But if Delcy Rodriguez is not acting in good faith and is not cooperating with the United States, President Trump said that she might expect worse things happen to her, worse things than happen to Nicolas Maduro. So right now, this power balance is extremely intricate, but we will see how it will unfold in next few days and few months.
Alexandra, Reuters reports that the Kremlin hopes to persuade the United States to trade Venezuela for Ukraine, refraining from interfering in U.S. actions in Venezuela in exchange for concessions regarding Russia's plans for Ukraine. According to Reuters, officials in Moscow believe that by removing the Maduro regime, the U.S. has effectively declared Latin America its sphere of influence. As a result, the Kremlin elite has interpreted Washington's actions as a signal that behind the scenes, sphere for sphere deals may be possible. Notably, Reuters noted that Russia floated a similar idea during Donald Trump's first term. Whether Washington could truly consider Ukraine as a subject of geopolitical bargaining, and what do you think?
First of all, I must say that for the United States, they don't really care about trading something with Russia. Yes, the United States stated this is our hemisphere, this is our sphere of influence, but it has nothing to do with Ukraine, because the American side definitely didn't ask Russia anything. They definitely didn't ask Kremlin what do they think, how would they see that. It's not a trade. They just take what they believe is rightfully theirs due to American justice system. And it's very important to also stress that for the American side, for President Trump, Maduro is one person, but the regime is something completely different. It's on the one hand, yes, right now in Europe, especially in Russia, especially the Russian propaganda is constantly repeating this idea, regime change, regime change, regime change. There is no regime change in Venezuela. So we cannot say that this can be a trade-off. No. The Americans believe they have a criminal according to their justice system. There's a criminal. He's been indicted since 2020, since March 2020. And I also should say that the Biden administration did not cancel this indictment, didn't do anything with the indictment, and they only offered more money for the capture of Maduro, because in March 2020, there were 15 million offered to anyone who can give the information that would lead to the capture of Maduro, and the Biden administration added 10 million. So during the Biden administration, they offered $25 million for anyone who could lead to the capture of Maduro, and the Trump administration added another 25 million. So coming back to the hemisphere issue, yes, the American side sees that person as a danger to the hemisphere. They don't see that action of the American side as a change of the regime. They want to see a democratic election, yes, but this is not a change of the regime. It's not a trade-off. It's not that much of the action of the big power players of the 19th century. And the American side doesn't want to see that. They understand, and it's basically almost written in the strategy of national security that was published in December 2025, that Ukrainian security is European security. For the American side, and in the strategy of national security, it's stated, and it's bluntly stated, that Europe must be secure, Europe must be powerful, Europe must be able to secure its own borders. So yes, the American side wants Europe to take care of Ukraine. This is absolutely true. But they want to see Europe powerful. They want to see Europe being able to protect its borders. And of course, for the Americans, Ukraine is seen as part of the European Union and as part of Europe, definitely. That goes without a question. But also basically as a part of the European Union, because European Union sees Ukraine as an obvious part of the Union in the nearest future. So this is what the Americans want to see. Yes, they want to see Europe powerful. Yes, they want to see Europe ready to protect itself. And if the Americans want to talk about hemispheres with anyone, that definitely wouldn't be Putin. Just look at how Pete Hegseth, the Minister of War, basically laughed at Russian military because speaking in front of the military, Pete Hegseth just a few hours ago said, oh, so probably Russian war machines couldn't help really much, couldn't help Maduro. The Russian military equipment was sold to Venezuela, and Venezuela bought a lot of Russian equipment. So the Minister of War of the United States, Minister of Defense, the head of the Pentagon, Pete Hegseth, basically laughed at the fact that, oh, Russian weapons, oh, they helped Maduro so much. We understand this is the view of the American side of the power of Russian weaponry in comparison to the American weaponry. And if the American side would want to talk about hemispheres with anyone, that definitely wouldn't be Putin. That would be Xi Jinping. And Donald Trump plans to speak to Xi Jinping, maybe about the hemispheres also, but in April. Their meeting is planned for April. And right now, of course, those tankers, that shadow fleet of Venezuela, where those tankers were going to. The friends of Venezuela are Iran, North Korea, Russia, and China. All those tankers were going to Hong Kong. All those tankers were going to China. So this situation with Maduro is also a blow to China and to Chinese presence in that hemisphere, in that part of the world. So for President Trump, yes, he might talk about hemispheres, but not with Putin and not with anyone from the Russian regime, not anyone from the Russian government. And for the American side, again, talking about hemispheres, yes, this is their hemisphere. They want to state that this is the Western Hemisphere and this is something of interest to the United States. But they want to see Europe powerful, and they want to see Europe being able to answer to anyone, including Putin or anyone else who might put Europe in danger. So of course, it's let's say it's again Russian propaganda, and Russian side is trying to say, oh, it's a regime change, and they just traded Venezuela for Ukraine. They didn't trade anything. The United States didn't do any. They are stating that's not a regime change. That's one thing. And the other thing, they would never ask anyone's permission to bring to justice, even if it's a leader of a country, especially they will not talk to the Russian side. If they would talk to anyone, that would be Xi Jinping.
Alexandra, a little bit more about oil. The Kremlin fears that the overthrow of Maduro could lead to a drop in oil prices. Leading Russian analysts warn the US President Donald Trump's plan could have far-reaching consequences for Russia's economy. Reports build. Venezuela possesses the largest oil reserves in the world, as we know, but compared to Arab countries and Russia, it exports relatively small volumes. Nevertheless, Venezuela's oil reserves represent a massive potential that American corporations could develop. For Russia, this is of critical importance. The price of oil directly affects whether the Russian budget has sufficient funds to cover pensions, the government apparatus, and the war effort. If prices fall even further, could the budget face a deficit, in your opinion?
Well, of course, for the Russian side, it's extremely important for the prices of oil to be high and to be higher, and the higher the better for the Russian side, of course. And Venezuela has the biggest oil reserves, but the Venezuelan oil is heavy, and it will take, according to analysts, according to different experts, it will take no less than 18 months to restart the not only the production of oil in the numbers that would influence the market, but also they need to restart and reimagine, I would put it this way, the infrastructure, because the infrastructure that Venezuela is working with is from the 60s and the 70s. It was built by the Americans before Chavez regime nationalized everything, and all oil companies and infrastructure that was built by the Americans in Venezuela. It's important to remember, Venezuela was one of the richest countries of Latin America. It never had any military dictatorship as many different Latin American countries in that same way. They had military dictatorship, but not in the same way, because Venezuela was always very prosperous, really had great reserves and really managed to sell a lot of goods to different countries. So it was very rich before the socialist Maduro regime, and before the Chavez regime, first of all, the Chavismo, then before the socialist Maduro regime. So for the Russian side, it's important not to see Venezuelan oil on the market, and for anyone, and for, we must say, for Persian Gulf countries too. But the experts say that it will take no less than 18 months for something to happen, although the futures for oil would be sold preliminary and would be sold before that period of time. So we understand that this is a blow, of course, for the Russian economy, and potentially it's a big blow for the Russian economy and for the Russian side in general. Of course, Nicolas Maduro, such a big supporter of the relationship with Russia, and the person who visited also the Putin's military parade in May. Of course, this is a blow for Russia diplomatically and economically too.
Alexandra, also about Greenland, because Stephen Miller, Deputy Chief of Staff at the White House, stated that Greenland should become part of the United States as an element of America's security architecture, not ruling out the possibility of a military takeover of the island. According to Politico, the U.S. could potentially take control of Greenland as early as 2026. Such a move could be timed to symbolic milestones. How seriously is Washington considering a scenario involving the use of force to establish control over Greenland, in your opinion? So what do you think?
Well, President Trump started his second presidency from talking about Greenland and talking about Greenland becoming the 52nd state, because of course Canada was supposed to become the 51st state of the United States. But also Greenland is actually important for the United States, for United States national security, because in the tragic possibility of, for example, nuclear war or any kind of warheads flying to the United States, they would not fly from Russia through Europe, because if we just take a look at the globe, we understand that it's going to be much faster for them to fly through Greenland. So Greenland is important for knowing as soon as anything happens in the Russian hemisphere. If anything flies from Russia or from China to the United States, then it would fly through the North Pole, it would fly through Greenland, and for national security, this is an important step to have those possibilities to see that something happened on the other side of the globe. The other thing, and I think it's maybe even more important, talking about oil reserves, but not in Greenland, but in the Arctic. The Arctic is a very important part right now of the globe for the United States, and it will take billions of dollars to restart the oil production in Venezuela, and it will take billions of dollars to start producing oil in the Arctic. The United States have the access to the Arctic through Alaska, but if the United States would have control of Greenland, of course, that would be a way bigger control of the Arctic and of the Arctic region. So I suppose that for the American side, of course, it's actually important. It's not just merely words. It's actually important for them to have the control of Greenland. But in what way? In what way would they seek that control of Greenland? Militarily? So this would be a war between countries of NATO. I suppose that the American side would like to have a more control of Greenland, but in a either financial way or in a peaceful, let's say, way. For example, there are American military present in Greenland right now. Maybe there would be much more American personnel, American servicemen present in Greenland. Maybe this way the authorities of Denmark would not be against having more American soldiers, more American personnel, more American servicemen on the territory of Greenland, if it wasn't for the fear of the fact that the Americans can actually act that irrationally as to militarily take Greenland. So I suppose the government of Greenland, the government of Denmark would be ready to accept more Americans, more American personnel, more American companies on the territory of Greenland without any military action, let's say, from the American side. But again, no one was expecting that Maduro would be just taken out of Venezuela without having boots on the ground. So right now, maybe we just don't know what to expect from the American side, from the Trump administration regarding Greenland. But the only thing we understand that they are quite serious about really having control in some way, having some control of Greenland.
Alexandra, thank you so much for interesting, important conversation as always. Thank you for also supporting Ukraine and Ukrainian people. Alexandra Filippenko, political analyst, European Leadership Network UK member, was with us today. Please, guys, share this interview and continue supporting Ukraine. See you.
Thank you very much. See you.